Let me start by saying my name, I'm Demorea Evans, better known as Truck, when I ran the street, and Truckee to the youth in the street that I deal with now. I'm grateful for this opportunity to be able to share a little bit about me. And my focus for today will be youth in West Oakland, past, present, and future. And in order for me to make it live, I have to share a little bit about myself. I am a product of West Oakland. I was born and raised in Campbell Village, Lower Bottom. When I was growing up as a kid, it was the boonies. So, it switched a little later on to Lower Bottom, which was my generation. But I grew up as a kid in Campbell Village when it was recognized as the boonies. And it kind of shaped, the village showed me a lot about what I'm going to talk about, how we got to this point. And growing up in the house, two brothers with a single mom, never had a man live in the house with me, never saw what that looked like. So, growing up in the hood, being raised by a mother, then being raised by the men in the neighborhood is how I was taught. So, my mother put some things in me, and then the streets put some things in me. Just to kind of fast forward so I can get to, the whole thing with youth in West Oakland. Campbell Village was, I look at it now, I would never change my upbringing. I'm grateful for it, right? Because there's something that has taught me in learning the tools to be able to have to survive. It helped me to be able to live. At one point in time, just living in a place of survival, I figured that I was just alive, but now that I'm learning how to live, those survival tools actually work. So I wouldn't change it for anything in the world, but I wish it could have been a little different. And it was sort of like, I would say, quicksand. And being young, you really didn't know what was going on. I went to Prescott, which was the school right across the street, and being young and being able to see the people that were shaping and molding my environment, I really didn't know the age difference because I was so young. And as I started to grow, I started to see that these people are actually really young who were in this lifestyle that I was witnessing growing up as a child. And when you don't have much to glean from, you want to become a part of what it is you see. And when I was growing up, the D-boy was who I seen, the hustler, was who raised me and made sure that I had food. And the killers in the neighborhood, the pimps, those were our role models, right? Because they took care of us, they helped out, they looked out for us, what I considered to be looking out. And so that's what we had to glean from. And as I grew up, right, like you want to be like what you see. When I look at kids now, and I'm just grateful for guys like a Steph Curry, to where kids can be like, oh, I want to play basketball and I want to shoot. And I want to do this and I want to be a great artist. I want to be this, I want to be that. Because then, man, we didn't have what they have now by way of social media and the internet to be able to glean from. We had to look at what was before us, and that's what we saw. And I wanted to grow up to be the neighborhood hustler, because that's what I saw. He was the picture of success. He looked like his life was good. He looked like his life was well, and he had everything that he needed. My mother rode the bus. He probably had a Benz and Mustangs and things like that, right? So that's what I wanted to grow up to be able to help my family, not knowing that my situation, although we were put in this projects, low income, no man in the house, welfare situation, food stamp situation, that the best thing that I could have ever had was what my mom was giving, which was love. And but when you're young, man, you really can't pick up on those things, because when she's loving, she's too busy not looking like the cool parent. So I'm gleaming and trying to be what it is I see, man. I want this. I got to be a part of this. And then I'm starting to see some of my friends as we growing up, and they start not to play with us anymore. Like, no one wants to be the motorcycle. No one wants to sit on the curb and talk about that's my car when the car is going by screaming out, that's my car, that's my car. No one wanted to ride the bikes and create the ramps and do wheelies off the ramp and go and play. We used to play this game called Poison, where it was two walls in between the cafeteria and the only way I can describe it is by calling out her name. Miss McLean offers at Prescott School, to where there was like these two walls where it was just like a dry spot. And we used to play Poison, and you had to get up. You couldn't be the last person on the wall, but it was something that we did almost every single day religiously. And we started to see them numbers start to taper off and start to die down because there was a recruiting that was taking place. Didn't know it, but some of us was covered and protected, because one thing my mama just wasn't going for was me being involved in street activity. Although it was around me, that was never an option for me. And I can't say the same for a lot of my friends, because a lot of guys ended up being a part of this recruiting young. And it's from the starvation of living in that poverty set situation that we all had to experience by way of living in the projects. But I can't say that it was all bad, right? Because the beautiful thing about where I grew up and how I grew up, I also learned, and that's just kind of setting one stone, right? But I want to talk about what I did get out of growing up young. Although we lived in Campbell Village, it was a village. Like what folk talked about, it takes a village to raise a kid or raise kids. And a village most definitely raised me. From the Miss Rosemary's to the Miss Ollie's. Miss Ollie was the place where there was a line, like how we see now with food trucks. But after school, you would go to Miss Ollie's house and there would be a line out in front of Miss Ollie's house because everyone was trying to get an icy after school. You had those names and Miss Barbara and Duty, who all made sure that we as kids were respectful and doing what we were supposed to do. If someone got in trouble, you were going to get snatched up. They was going to call home or walk you home, and everybody kind of tended to one another. And from that, I learned a whole lot about family, right? So I learned, what the hustler looked like, but then also had these peelers, which were all women. They taught what it looked like to be family. A lot of my friends, we all recognize one another as brothers still to this day because of our upbringing. So I had the hustler, then we had these women trying to raise up, and I'm putting the emphasis on women because that is what raised us. I just created a mural paying homage to those who raised us in my neighborhood, and there's probably 3 men that a bunch of men were able to just kind of reflect on and consider and think about when we were doing this, that actually can say that they had positive impact on our lives. So we had the hustlers, and then we had these women, and then you had what we had was like the little stuff like after school program at school, and then we had Jubilee West, which was the Boys and Girls Club. And those were the things that we had to kind of help us to stay grounded, I would say. But you kept seeing people, your friends, kids, slowly but surely stepping away. And to only discover that they were getting into what we call it as the game. That's how we just gonna tag it today, the game, right? And then you started to see, your friends doing different stuff. Now, when I got to middle school, I was able to see, like, man, okay, these people aren't old. They're my age. And I wanted to be a part so bad, but my mother was like, nah, that's not gonna happen. You fear the police second, but you gonna fear me first. And, it was, trying to be a hustler growing up in high school, man, it was extremely hard when they calling out rollers coming down 10th. I had people like, hey, your mama getting ready to come out the back door. I just seen Jean come out that back door. You know what I'm saying? So I had to move, not just from the police, but I also had to move from my mother. So I had this real short-lived, drug career. But what I did pick up, man, was just being around, and I picked up some of the real bad mannerisms. Was beat real bad when I was 13. I was beat real bad when I was 13, and I don't know what it did to me, but I know I became afraid, and I would fight at the drop of a dime. And from fighting, it created this monster in me. And I became like this very popular, unpopular person at the same time. The people in the street loved me, but the people who raised me didn't want me around their kids. I eventually became what I was watching, right? Without the attachments, no drugs, no guns. I never really got into any of that, but I was a fighter. And I grew up in a time to where I respected my elders, but I was going through these growing pains, wanting to be like my environment. And eventually, I just kind of got out there, man, and was wilding out and was thinking that my mom just really didn't know much of anything that was going on. And here's where it turned at. Here's where it turned. I'm probably 19, I'm laying in the bed asleep. And at the time I had blonde hair, and that was probably like the craziest time of my life. I was really out of control, fighting all the time. And my mother brought me she brought me papers and asked me to sign the papers. And I didn't really think much of it because it was my mother that was asking me to sign the papers. And when I got up, I said, what was that you had me sign? And she said, those were insurance papers, because that dumb stuff you out there doing in the street gonna get you killed. Key. And I didn't teach you that. So go on and keep it up if that's what you want to do, but I need you to sign these papers because you can't leave me with a bill. And I could not get that out of my head. That was stuck in my head. That my mom know what I'm doing, one, and she know it's gonna end up killing me, two. Now, what am I gonna do about it? Now, my mom is the pillar in the neighborhood. My mom used no drugs, and that's why she was so adamant about staying away from drugs and not using drugs. But she was also the safe house. Like when my friends' parents would get in trouble, CPS or something would try to come, my mom would always keep my friends. I'm used to sleeping in twin double beds put together with 8, 9 kids. All my cousins done lived with me. And we done made it work in this 2-bedroom apartment. So like my mom really, her words carried a lot of weight, and it stuck in my head. And I'm like, man, I have to do something. But my time in growing up, I was an artist. So I used to go to the barbershop, and I used to sit in the barbershop and watch the barbers cut hair, because being an artist, you can appreciate the step-by-step in everything that you see. And I started cutting hair when I was 13. One of the things I just picked up, cutting all my friends before school for $2. Cut all day, make $20. Now I'm a barber, I make $60 in 30 minutes. But cut all day and make about $20. And I said, man, I can't be in these streets because I'm gonna die. If I keep on, I'm gonna die. I ain't gonna make it up out these streets. And I went to the neighborhood barbershop and asked the guy if it was possible if I could work up under him, and he allowed me to become an apprentice in his shop. And from there on, I mean, I still was partying a lot, having a lot of fun, but I started to taper down all of the fighting and the violence. And, there was times, man, now that I'm just thinking about it, like there was times I couldn't even come outside for like long periods of time because people was looking to kill me. And my family is like, we ain't never seen you in the house this long, and really couldn't explain to my mother, like what's really going on. But like just to go from that to trying to, change and become a barber, I thought a lot of things went away. So where I come from is we did have structure, but then what was attractive was, the D-boy and the game, the culture, and we wanted to become that. And I tasted a little bit of that, right? Now, by the time I became an adult, you started to see more kids being born by kids because I really come through the crack era, right? So now you have a lot of kids raising themselves. So mothers and fathers became really young. So now these kids are having kids, and a lot of the kids aren't being raised by their parents. They're being raised by their grandmother or whoever it may be, right? Or by themselves a lot of times, right? And so that's where it started to shift. And I'm able to see this a little different because now I'm not selling no drugs. I'm off the street. I'm really not, wilding as much as I was because I didn't took on the spot as an apprentice. But I'm watching how the kids went from having people monitoring and making sure they was good to no one having any say-so about anything that kids was doing. So we went from having some structure to watching the structure start to kind of decrease and decline. As these people raised us, they were the pillars from the 80s. But by the time they hit the 90s, now they seniors. So you have these seniors trying to raise these little kids of some other kids, from their kids who are actually young because of what happened in the 80s. And now everything is just like going, wow, it's starting to get out of control. The structure is slowly but surely falling apart. Like there was just some things you just couldn't do or you'd have been in trouble. And then you started to see a lot of things being accepted and being okay for our kids to be able to do. And then fast forward coming into the 90s, coming out of the 90s, going into the 2000s, you really started to see, now that I'm older, the age breakdown is really young for the people that's getting involved in the street, right? So back when I was growing up, there were certain things we couldn't do. The game got a few. But by the time I hit my 20s, that's when you really started to see these young kids being recruited heavy. Although if you wanted to get in the game, you could get in the game when you was young. But when I hit around 21, 22, then you really started to see these young kids being introduced to a lot of stuff. I started to see a lot more kids. Heroin was the choice of drug in my area. Of course, crack ran rampant, but when I grew up, heroin was what it was. So if you hung around there, the majority of the time, what a lot of the old heads was using was heroin. And man, I remember one day sitting in the shop with the window open, and I smelled this real bad aroma come through the window, and went outside to see what it was, and it was a young guy throwing up because he had just been introduced to heroin. But I had been seeing him walking with these guys over time, right? They introduced him to it, and before you know it, he's streetwalker and that whole lifestyle, the recycle bin, can I borrow $1? And man, you started to see a lot of that. Then you started to see a lot of cats, taking on youngsters and bringing them in to work, do their dirty work or whatever, right? So you saw them embracing the drugs, then you started to see them embrace the game. And when you look at the street right now, and you look at the average age of the tough guy in the street, he's about 11 to 14. He's not really old. Like now that I'm really getting involved in the street, I'm learning that the kids are getting really young, right? And they're probably the most active in the street. And the one thing I didn't like when it happened to me that I don't like that is happening to them was that they're being written off. Like everybody threw the towel in on me. Folks didn't want me around their kids. Nobody wanted to deal with me. And now when you see how folk are talking, and the truth of the matter is our kids are a little out of control. No, not a little bit. They're a lot out of control. And they need a lot of support. The crime rate in the city is going up. I just tried to get some car insurance on my car and gave them my zip code. And they was like, man, this is the worst zip code in the whole United States to try to get insurance. And I had to use another zip code because and just to see, like I didn't know it was even broke down like that, right? And being in West Oakland, man, the crime rate is high. And the reason why the crime rate is high, people are like, oh, they killing. No, it's not a lot of killing. It's just a lot of everything that's going on. Robbing and cars being stolen, shootings and beatings and fight. It's very consistent throughout that 94607. And that's where I live. And I still live there, and that's where my business has always been. So just seeing where we are and just seeing how folk done threw the towel in, that's just something that I could never do, because once upon a time, the towel was thrown in on me. And my thing was to make sure that with me being on that corner, I've been on that corner since 1997 as a barber. I still have the corner. That I can be some kind of support and some kind of help to our kids in that community. Fast forward, COVID come and everybody life changed, right? Everybody life kind of just went in a whole bunch of different directions. And so did mine. And one of the things I felt I had to do was make sure that my people had some stuff. The only thing I can really think about was seniors, kids, and the unhoused during COVID, right? And I was just like, man, these kids ain't gonna have much of nothing to do. They ain't gonna have much of nothing to eat. And I wanted to make sure that they had stuff in the house. So me and my friends, we put together some money. We created some grocery bags and made a live and ran it through the neighborhood to let folk know that we had these grocery bags. And the people start coming. Then my friend said, man, do a live. So I did a live, let the people know that we was out there, and then I started asking people for $1, right? When I started to ask them for the $1 and for like a little, off the live for the cash app, when I woke up the next morning, I had $15,000 that people was just sending me. So what it allowed me to be able to do was, now that people were seeing what I had going on, my inbox was full of folk calling, asking, could they help with cooking and helping me to be able to feed. So now I'm letting them know, I only got this much money, I gotta stretch this. And man, and we started to figure it out to how we was gonna feed the unhoused, we were gonna feed the seniors, and we was gonna make sure kids get food. And from there, restaurants started seeing the stuff and start bringing it. Now this is just the move to where I'm fit, and I'm gonna get to where I'm at with youth right now. And now restaurants is giving me food. I'm getting 300 and 400 meals a day from these different restaurants to be able to help me with my people. And it was a point in time to where we all started to take it to each door. And when we started to take them to the door, kids were saying, man, I haven't ate in days. I haven't ate in days. And that was a real problem for me. So learning what made kids frustrated, because now we, instead of just dropping off the meals, we pulling up and we sitting outside and we actually eating with the kids. So now I'm becoming Uncle Truck. So I have a host of God kids that I done embraced since the pandemic. And two things that came out, and I wished I would have had help with one growing up, of why these kids were so embarrassed. And one of the things that I kept hearing from time, well, no, more than the rest of the concerns that the kids had was that they can't read. They couldn't read and they couldn't count. Like, those were the two big things that kids were talking about during the pandemic. But I was able to learn this once I got in and was able to feed them. To see that these kids were starving physically and then starving, in reference to education. Now I'm starting to learn things. And before you knew it, man, I shut my shop down. Well, it was already shut down because of the pandemic, but I closed my shop down and I started an organization called Mama Jean's Create Hub. And that has now, with Boss, I've been working trying to put some things in place so that we can kind of cater to the 94607. And the reason is because of the past history when it comes to violence. West Oakland is so segregated, so small, but so segregated. And a lot of our kids can't go to certain places, and a lot of people can't come into certain places and help us, help certain people. So down where I'm at, there's not a lot of resources for kids. And man, I've been gifted, as I shared with you guys, through art. And I wanted to be able to give kids an opportunity to be creative. So I started this organization called Mama Jean's Create Hub. Mama Jean is my mother, and the organization is Mama Jean's Create Hub, to where I can help to introduce kids to various arts. And so many times people think art is when drawing on a paper or drawing on canvas, or you spray painting a wall or whatever, sculpting something. And the truth of the matter is, the art is when you really look at how a person do what they do their way. And what I've learned over time, over this pandemic, is that our kids really haven't had an opportunity to be able to think and be expressive. Everyone is trying to shape and mold them to be what we think they need to be, and trying to guide them into different directions and areas that we feel or think that they should do or that they should participate in. And my thing is, I want to be able to create a space to where they can feel free to think. I want to be able to create a space to where they can have their voice back, so that they can work on tapping into their creativity. There's a lot that's going on. We don't know what these kids actually like, but they're more than athletes. They're more than dancers. She means much more than how beautiful she is, right? And God has equipped each and every person with something that they can do to where their creativity takes over. And in that alone, it starts to help you with your mental and your emotional when you discover what it is you look. I done seen folk jump up and say, man, I'm about to go and cook. And now that I reflect back on stuff like that, that's them stepping away from whatever may have been bothering them into a creative place, so that they can have the therapy and help themselves, instead of not knowing knowing what they're doing, or knowing what they're doing, but it's actually something that is helping them to be better in spite of what may be going on around them. And I want to be able to create a space with kids, for kids, so that they can do that. And one of the best things that happened to me, man, I got hit by a car, got set down, and in the midst of all of that last year, I started to build and develop some relationships. Brother by the name of Daryl Allums come along, because I also do these bike rides throughout the city, peaceful ones. But we can organize from 300 to 1,000 people on any given day of a bike ride. And me and Daryl, with his organization, Campbell Village, we all started to connect through what I had was the rollout crew, because this is a way for me to be able to get kids out so that they can, one, be safe, because social distancing was a big thing. And then 2, do some exercise. And then 3, they'll be able to socialize, right? So we started connecting that away. And other opportunities started to present itself. He's like, man, Boss is getting ready to launch their Creditable Messengers program. I would love for you to be a part of that. And so, I'm like, man, I'll try this out. And then I started going to these trainings and meeting different people. And the whole organization thing is new to me. I just shut it down listening to what God told me to do. And started meeting all these different people, learning all these different languages, figuring out how it is I can be helpful. And here I am today, working with Boss, side by side with Boss, getting ready to do some more work with Boss, more in depth on being able to be all of what it is we need down there in that 94607 area code. Me focusing on kids, Boss focusing on the whole family thing, so it all kind of tied together, because now I'm learning the importance of getting a child and having the whole house, right? You need the parents and you need the kids to be able to see the change that you really desire. So where I see the hope, man, in all of this, there is people outside that really care about those who feel as if they didn't been left out. The resources is available in there. And I'm just glad that I'm a part of what's about to get ready to take place, because I don't believe our young boys can only get help after, they experience jail time or being documented. And my focus, man, really is, and this is my hashtag with my organization, is hashtag Opportunity Oakland. And the whole scheme of things is to slow our youth down, to give them a chance to grow up. Slowing our youth down to give them a chance to grow up. And that's what I'm being able to do now, being able to link arms with organizations like Campbell Village and Boss. And you listen to the heartbeat of the street and they say our youth is gone and they don't have a chance. But I beg to differ, because I was the same person that they threw the towel in on, same person that they said I wouldn't see 18. I just turned 46 a few months ago. I'm the same person who would end up in jail. I ain't never been in jail. Same person that they said I would be on drugs. I ain't never used a drug in my life. Same person that they said I would be an alcoholic. I've never drunk alcohol a day in my life. I just made some bad choices. And bad choices they do not define your life. They just tell the moment in which you are living. And I need these kids to know that you don't have to be documented, because what we can do is reroute. We ain't got to send you through the system. And that's what I'm trying to accomplish and be a part of with Boss. Building opportunities for self-sufficiency. When these kids can understand that being self-sufficient is having the right esteem about self, how you see yourself, how you handle yourself out when socially, and just learning life tools to be the best version of yourself. Because when we start focusing on building our kids that way, young, yes, teenagers, young adults, they need to be repaired. But our young kids, we can still just start from there. Those blank canvases. We can probably have to remove some stuff, or rethink, help them to be able to see some stuff different. But they're blank canvases, and we can reroute them. And that's my focus, man. As we work with the families, we work with the youth, hoping that we can tie this thing all together and bring it back to what it used to be, the village that we know that it can be, and giving folks something hopeful, giving them hope to be able to look into their future, because of what it is, the examples that is being set before them now in 2024. So that's my spiel. My name is Truck again, and I'm just grateful to be a part of Oakland. I'm proud of Oakland. In spite of what you think, in spite of what they say, Oakland is beautiful and Oakland is great, and it's going to be that again.